Spring ball is underway, well underway, and we are about 21 days, actually exactly 21 days from the spring game. And you all want to know exactly what's going on, whether it's the hypotheticals, whether it's things that are going to happen during the season, position battles as they currently stand, all of that. We're going to tackle it in this week's, in our bi-weekly, do I have that right? Bi-weekly? Michigan Mailbag. Let's get to it. This episode of Locked On Wolverines.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Happy Saturday. We are back and doing it. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I'm your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire, through USA Today Sports Media Group. And as promised, we have a Saturday mailbag. Yes, it's not at noon, and life comes at you fast, but we're actually having it. So that's the good news. So let us get right to it, starting with our leaders and best. James Crudup at James Crudup 6. Do you believe the rumors that admissions may lighten up in some capacity for transfers? If so, why did they wait until the program hit rock bottom to do it? I wouldn't say, basketball maybe is rock bottom. Football's obviously doing great. Anthony Broom had on the fort, he had a thing from admissions that kind of refuting, like, hey, it's all up to department by department. I don't know, right? Like, so it's hard to say. I hope that they do kind of lighten up a little bit, because that would, just make sense in the world. Keeping in mind that they're going to still have to cut it in the classroom. My own experience with having dropped out of school after the 2000 winter 2000 semester, I dropped out, but I didn't actually drop any of my classes. So my GPA plummeted, and the university said, hey, don't come back until you kind of get a handle on your life. And so a couple years later, I went to community college per their request. For 2 semesters, just to show that I could do school again, and coming back in. And I had to be very meticulous about what classes, right? Like, I had to meet with my academic advisor at Michigan, and for him to be like, this one's going to count, this one's going to count. If you take this, it won't count. Take this. I had a list, right, of what was and wasn't going to count. And then even with the list, I had to double check. And even after all of it, I'm pretty sure that not everything hit, but that's fine, because I went to school for 5 years. So I don't know. It's kind of, you hope that Michigan kind of gets its ish together here, but I don't know how much I buy it or not. But certainly I think that Dusty May also is, as far as the basketball program is concerned, is not going to be targeting guys that aren't going to qualify, right? I think that that's probably, like, he talked about, we need to find people that, it's like the academic mission of the university isn't going to change. So we need to find people who are going to fit that mold. And I think there is a certain type of person where Michigan fits them and they fit Michigan. And with football, you could kind of see that. Obviously, they got transfers in football wise last year, and they were all ones that helped, right? They're not necessarily going to go after the high end, top profile transfers, right? They're not going to win free agency most of the time. But they are going to get guys that kind of fit the mission of the university. So I think that's probably going to still hold true. My brother in metal, Michael Wolf at MWolf21. It's been said and shown it will be similar offensive strategy. What do you expect to change? What do you expect to see different, if anything? Well, it's hard to really tell, because we haven't seen anything literally yet. And there's no one really saying anything except for, JJ McCarthy said that with Kirk Campbell leading the charge, that he thinks it'll be a little bit more open. He'll be unleashed a little bit. I think they might be a little more dynamic, because Harbaugh had a very set style of how he wanted to do things. And Sharon's had other stops, where, he played at Oklahoma. He was at Louisville. He was at, Central Michigan. And he might take some things from those places and say, we still want to have the same identity, but maybe we want to be a little bit more dynamic. And I think, and we'll get to some of this later, with some of the playmakers you have, especially because you don't right now have at least like the 6'4" wide receiver outside of Fred Moore. And he's 6'2", I believe. So I kind of feel like you've got to kind of change exactly what you're doing, right? You don't have that big, tall, lanky possession receiver. You've got smaller, faster guys, which granted, that's kind of what Michigan was trying to run under Josh Gaddis. And then they just kind of still got people that didn't fit that mold. I feel like you're going to have to kind of change things up a little bit to kind of utilize that. Use a little bit more of the horizontal game on top of the vertical game, which it's always kind of baffled everyone. Why do they not really use screens? They've got all these really speedy guys use screens. I could see that kind of changing under Sharon Moore, but that's just my own pure speculation. So I don't know what's going to change yet. We'll find out hopefully more during the spring game, but I would guess we're not going to really know until week 2 against Texas, maybe week 1, but against Fresno State, but more probably in week 2. Jimmy Whitner at Jimmy Whitner 1 will get a commitment first for Moore or May, or first Moore or May. I'm going to go with May just because I think you could see a guy like recommit, right? Like you could see Connie Roos recommit. Christian Anderson decommitted yesterday. You could see him recommitting. I don't think he will, but that's just my own speculation too. I feel like there's a higher chance with more hype. Actually, I'm going to go with Sharon Moore because they're having visits and stuff now. As much as I want to say Dusty May, because it's like, oh, he's here, he's hype, but they've all either have done is kind of. I mean, Sharon's really not lost anybody. But, for the most part, they haven't gotten guys in. You hope that usually when you get a new head coach, you get a big bump, and it hasn't happened yet for either. May's been on the job for a week, so it's not surprising he hasn't had any. But at least Sharon Moore is starting to get recruiting. He's got his staff in place, all that kind of stuff. So I'll go with Sharon Moore. Number 2, in your opinion, with the info you have now, who will be the starting quarterback? Right now it's wide open. If I were to guess, it would be Alex Orgeron. Just kind of feels like he's the one who gets talked about the most. Seems like he and Jack Tuttle are kind of in the pole position at the moment. I'd go with Orgeron personally, but it wouldn't surprise me if it was Tuttle. Wouldn't surprise me if it was a transfer. But again, have no idea. It's hard to settle these things in spring. Sometimes it happens. Wilton Speight basically earned the starting job, despite what a lot of people thought, right? This was why I always, speak of the prowess of Steve Lorenz. Steve was telling me kind of going into the spring game, it's Wilton Speight's job. I was listening to the radio, Sirius XM, the day before the season opener in 2016. And not only were like national hosts saying like it's going to be John O'Korn, you had like local interviews that they'd reel in and they'd be like, yeah, probably John O'Korn. And we kind of already knew better, or at least Steve knew better. And I knew by virtue through him. Number 3, will Michigan be an NCAA tournament team next year? Come back to me when there's a roster. So right now they have one recruit committed, loosely committed in Darrell Brooks. They've got they've got Terrence Williams Jr. who could go pro. They've got Namari Burnett who also maybe could do the same. I mean, when I say pro, I don't necessarily mean they're going to be an NBA draft pick, but they could say like, all right, that's enough. They've got 3 guys on scholarship at the moment, so it's kind of hard to really say. Number 4, how's Zuri? Well, she's been kind of needy ever since Sarah and I went to Florida early last month. But she's good. She's doing all right. Mostly needy. Also naughty. She likes to been wrecking my screen as far as jumping up on the window whenever someone just even casually walks by on the sidewalk. So it's been fun. Anyway, Jonathan Joseph at J Joseph 2156. What is the main focus in the spring portal? I don't think it's safety. I think even with the losses, Michigan was deep there. I know that we got this question again later, but I'll answer it now, and we'll just give an honorable mention later. I think that it's probably wide receiver. I think you need at least another like viable option there. Someone that's a little bit more of a ringer. Could be quarterback if they don't like what they've got. I think they're probably set at running back, tight end, offensive line. It wouldn't surprise me if they brought in another tight end. But I think they probably feel good about their options. Feels like it's Colston Loveland. Marlon Klein seems to be really rising. Offensive line seems good. Defensive, I could see them bringing in another edge rusher. I could see them going after another linebacker just because, like, you've got 2 guys for sure in Ernest Hausman and Jayshawn Barham. You hope that Jimmy Rolder's there. You're hearing some good things about Jaden Hood, but I mean, it's kind of was the same thing last year. And Samaj Bridgman as well. I still feel like that room feels better, but I feel like it could be bolstered a little bit, and certainly corner as well. But I think safety. I think you're right. Safety's in a good spot. Spencer Whitmore finishing us out at Spencer Whitmore. Thoughts on going to the spring game versus watching it on TV? I don't think there's anything honestly special about going to the spring game unless you just want to be in the big house. I don't think it's like a crazy atmosphere. I know Ohio State fans like to try to point it out. Right now, they're not doing any renovations and closing off one side of the stadium like they did last year. April 20th, a little bit later in the year, so you would expect it would probably be a little bit warmer. But I don't know. I would watch it on TV if I didn't have to go, to be honest. I mean, yeah, I went to one before I started covering the team officially. And it was cold, and I didn't really think I couldn't glean anything from it. It was just about being in the big house with other fans. The big takeaway for me that day was that afterwards I went to Buffalo Wild Wings down on campus and was watching the Masters, and that got me obsessed with golf. So that's my big takeaway from having gone. I would watch it more on TV if I could. I think that's probably the better way to go. All right, we're going to continue going. We've got so many questions left. I took a ton of time with 5, so we've still got like 28 more or something like that coming up. So we'll continue on here in just a moment. But before we do, this week's March Madness Bracket Highlight is brought to you by our friends at Nissan. Each week we're picking one team that stands out, a team that's pushed it further than the rest, just like any of the all-new 2024 Nissan SUVs. These guys were able to take it to the next level. The Clemson Tigers were obviously this week's Nissan Rogue. Team absolutely surprised us with the powerful performance in their Sweet 16 win over Arizona. They'll take on the Alabama Crimson. I don't give a piss about nothing but the Tide, baby, in the Elite Eight for a chance to go to the Final Four. They say win life, go Rogue, and that's exactly what the Clemson Tigers have done here. So take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. We're going to continue on again still here in just a moment, but before we do, just when you consider daily fantasy sports, there's a lot of different ways you can play, and it's usually you versus the world. Maybe it's you versus the numbers. There's all different kinds of ways you can play, but have you ever thought about how much more fun it would be if you could grab a buddy and instead of playing against them, you guys team up against the world? That's the way to go. All right? That is, especially with this tournament going on, Bettor Together can help you out with that. So if your bracket is busted and you want to stay in the game, introducing Bettor Together, the first cooperative daily fantasy platform where teamwork triumphs talent, and you can play with your friends, not against them. So pick more or less on real-time player stats, strategize with your partner to boost your odds and climb the leaderboard together. Grab a friend, join the daily fantasy sports movement. And Bettor Together is great because you can stay connected with friends and you can build that teamwork, that camaraderie together. So download Bettor Together from the App Store. Sign up using the promo code LOCKEDON for a free $5 entry into any NCAA basketball contest. That's Bettor Together with the promo code LOCKEDON. Again, because winning alone is fun, but it is better together. All right, we have so many more here as we go to the Victors Valiant. We got 3 from William Cawthor. I'm not the one at William Cawthor 9, but so before the season, people said that JJ should wait until next year to enter. Why do you think his stock went all the way up? Well, because he showed you everything he kind of needed to. I know he left because he didn't really feel like he was going to be able to do anything extra, right? Like he didn't think that there was going to be some kind of like something else that he was going to be able to show. And that's clear now, right? Like, unless he just went out and threw for 4,000 yards in a season, which Michigan isn't going to do. I think that the people who said that were just people who weren't necessarily paying that much attention to his game, or even Michigan fans that were just kind of hoping he'd come back for a senior year. As far as he was very efficient. He made NFL throws. He had much more command in the pocket. He knew clearly what was happening more across from him. He very rarely made big mistakes. Most of his big mistakes came in one big game, right? 2, really. I mean, like, obviously all of his interceptions came in 2 games, and that was it. Just like, one of them was super injured. The other one, I don't know what was going on. Have some theories, but so I think that's it. Number 2, if Orgy is named the starter, is there a world where he plays like Lamar Jackson or Vince Young, where when they were in college and Michigan makes it back to the Natty? I don't think they're going to have a hero ball guy necessarily. I don't think they need it. Maybe they do. Michigan's kind of going to spread the ball out to everybody, right? It's not just going to be like one big hero. They're not looking to have a Lamar Jackson. They're not looking to have a one-man show generally. They're looking to have a little contribution from a lot of guys, and it adds up to a lot. But, it's absolutely possible they make it back to the national championship, get an efficient play from, doesn't matter if it's Orgy, whoever the quarterback is, good run game, solid offensive line play, among the best in the country, and what we expect the defense to be, it could be right there. Third question: if the entire roster from last year's team returned this season, do you think they would, without a doubt, pick to win it all? I don't think they'd be picked to be, but I think they should be. For whatever reason, Michigan's not going to get the same kind of credence as an SEC team. They just aren't. So there's a reason why you always see like LSU, like the last couple of years go like 8-4, and then the next year it's like, oh, they're going to be so good this next year. What's changed? Nothing. It's just LSU. They go 8-4 again. It's like, oh, next year they're going to be so good. Why? It's LSU. So, I don't think that Michigan's going to get that type of benefit of the doubt unless they won like 2 or 3 in a row. James Kovalevsky at Coach_Kovo. How important was Santa Ono in helping Michigan win the national championship? Do you think the football team could have done it if the previous school president were at the helm? He was instrumental in the sense that and this is, I think, the only way, and I don't think that this would have happened anyway, is that I think if it was Mark Schlissel, he would have really tried to sacrifice Jim Harbaugh at the altar of the NCAA gods, and that might have hurt them a lot more, right? Like, I know he was suspended for 6 games. I could have seen him just gone all season. So I think Santa Ono at least was cooler headed, but I mean, we still saw a self-imposed 3-game suspension at the beginning and them drop all their defenses late when the first sign of trouble, so I still think they should have gone to bat. If you think there's anything extra that I'm not sharing, like the whole reason they dropped the defense was the Chris Partridge, basically after they don't really prep the kids. They didn't like tell all the kids that were going to be interviewed by the NCAA to go get lawyers or anything like that. So Chris Partridge just was like, hey, don't, to my knowledge, just basically told some of the kids like, hey, don't go like, essentially snitching, but it was like, there was nothing to snitch about. Like, don't go out on limbs to try to say, something in effort to be cooperative. And then you had a player who went out and said he said that, and he was gone. And then they dropped their Jim Harbaugh defense, and the rest was history. So it was a bad situation. Santa Ono, I think, mitigated that to some degree. If it was Mark Schlissel, I think it would have been worse. So that's just me. Shane at Seamus0914, position you think Michigan will set their sights on in the transfer portal? There's your shout out, because obviously I covered that earlier. David G. Van Renen at X and Yellow 7. I think Sharon is going to start Orgeron and build a power running game like we have not seen built under Harbaugh. Unstoppable with nicely timed passes as well. What do you think? Thank you for your podcast, Isaiah. You're very welcome. I appreciate it. I don't know, right? Like, that would be great. I don't know if it's going to be any better than what we saw in 21, 22, 23. 23 wasn't amazing, but it would be interesting to see if they do some different things that, really more so utilize the RPO. But obviously, you got to have a quarterback that can run that. Can Orgy run it? I don't know. But I wouldn't go as far as you're kind of going. Is it possible? Yes. Is it plausible? I don't know. Clark at Blue for Life 8. Have you heard of the spring game? We ran similarly to how Harbaugh did it with having the coordinators as head coaches of their own team and drafting them, then playing an actual full go game without returns and such. Haven't heard anything. Wouldn't surprise me. But no, they haven't said what it's going to be. They haven't announced anything yet. Jacob Shavaria at Shavaria. Do you think there will be more punishment for Signgate? Is Caleb Downs leaving OSU? What game are you most looking forward to next year? I'll go with the Caleb Downs thing. I don't think so. I think that's just rumors Michigan fans are making to upset Ohio State fans because of the Buckeye scoop, pretending like Michigan's got to have a mass exodus. More punishment for Signgate. There's nothing more that you don't know. Okay, like we've kind of told you everything. I know there's a lot of people who say I don't tell you anything. I might wink a lot. Those who follow closely know that I've kind of told you everything that was happening there. Does that mean that punishment is over? No, they certainly could try to make an example of Michigan. I don't know how much they can or will. All the culprits essentially involved are gone. Connor Stallions, Jim Harbaugh. And Jim Harbaugh wasn't even a culprit, but they try to make him a sacrificial lamb. He's gone. So I don't know how much that they're going to do. I don't think I would imagine it's going to go away. It's not being talked about constantly like the way it was. So I would imagine that it's done. but I would not be surprised if they try to tack on something, but we'll see. The game I'm looking forward to most next year, that's difficult. I mean, probably Texas. Texas is one of those schools that I just have kind of had an affinity for, and to be able to see them in the big house. But I mean, it's so many. Texas, USC, Oregon. Maybe not Washington, because I don't love the idea. Even though I'm getting over my fear of flying, I don't love the idea of flying in midweek. Having like a 2-3 day turnaround of flying 5 hours and coming back. And Oregon, weirdly, I just don't care that much about. And then obviously Ohio State. That's always nerve-wracking but fun. Anton Sesmita Mangala at Sesmita Mangala. Which home game will have the better atmosphere, Texas, USC, or Oregon? Gonna be Texas out of those three. Texas and Oregon are expected to be the two biggest, the best of those three, of course. I think Texas, by virtue of being week 2, going to be warmer. Usually you just have better atmospheres early in the year. I know USC's 2 weeks later, but Oregon's more mid-season. I think that Texas is going to be the best atmosphere for sure. KB Go Blue. At KB Go Blue. That's it. KB is the person. Out of all the freshmen, who do you think has the potential to get some early playing time? Despite how crowded the running backs room is, I would not be surprised if Jordan Marshall cracked in really early. I think he's really got just incredible ability. I think they could see him the same way Michigan saw Blake Corum in 2020, right? Like, he was the first guy off, not even off the bench. He was the first guy that got the ball. I mean, he and Roman Wilson were out there in the first play against Minnesota, if memory serves. I could see Jordan Marshall kind of having that same type of deal. And, we've seen Michigan in at least the Jim Harbaugh era utilize some running backs earlier. Chris Evans in 2016, Zach Charbonnet was the starter in 2019. Blake Corum got the early run and was kind of the star of the show even in 2021 for the first half of the year before his injury really handed everything over to Hassan Haskins. So, yeah, I could see that. Finishing us out in segment 2 at Athir Kader, at Athir Kader 1. Hello, my bro. Who is going to be our starting quarterback, and who do we expect? Thanks. I mean, it's, again, way too early to tell. If I were to put money on it, I would say Alex Orji, but I'm not putting money on it. So let's just pump the brakes and see how spring plays out. All right, we're going to continue on. We've got so many more questions. We're going to lightning round it here in just a moment. But before we do, listen, there's a way that you can enjoy every single thing that you watch, listen to, pictures, all that kind of stuff. And the way you can do that is with Fire TV. Fire TV is your destination for sports, from live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as the Fire TV stick, which Sarah, I just bought her a new TV. It was a Samsung TV. They had the Samsung frame. And I'm like, hey, you can put everything up here. She's like, no, just plug in my Fire TV stick, please. Thank you. But it provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live TV. Whether it's opening weekend for baseball, the college basketball tournament, you're going to want to have that Fire TV, okay? Fire TV recently also created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. And that even includes all of us here at Locked On and most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. Fire TV channels let you dive into all of the game analysis, highlights, more to keep up to date with all of the latest in the world of sports. You got March Madness, you got NBA, playoffs are coming up. Major League Baseball just started, all of that. Not to mention there's great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, cooking videos. I love that the Curtis Stone Cooking with Curtis is what it's called. I don't remember what it's called. That's not it. The hot. I don't remember what it's called, but it's a podcast where he interviews celebrities and stuff, and they cook. It's pretty cool. So check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. Trust me on this. So go and learn more at Amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. Nothing we can do but always go over time on the mailbag. We are already at time, essentially, kind of. We've got about 8 left, 9 left, 10 left, something like that. I can't count. So we're going to go fast for the non-regular question askers, the Blue Crew. Robert Anschutz at Anschutz1. Sorry, our Anschutz1. When are you going to get a haircut? Just kidding. Well, I got one today. See? I don't know why people care about my hair. My question is, when are they going to open the Towsley Museum inside Schembeckler Hall so the public can see a once-in-a-lifetime filled-up trophy case? Probably never again. At Michigan, once they take away, they never give back. That's how it works. I'm not even kidding. I don't expect it to ever be open again unless they open a separate facility, which they've discussed. J. Rowe at Schoolboy 10. Anything in regards to anything new in regards to Ryan Day's brother's PI firm? Nothing new. As far as I know, the PI firm that was hired by a Michigan donor, they stopped hiring them for lots of reasons. Lots of dots are connected, but not enough to implicate, not enough for people to go. And maybe there's more people that are digging. I don't know. You'd think that they'd want to continue digging. Maybe there's digging that's happening underneath. I knew a lot of reporters, like, the Dan Wetzels of the world, some people at ESPN, that felt like they had a good handle on it, but they just couldn't finish it. So, will everything come out? I don't know. Hopefully. But again, for you Buckeyes who are thinking I'm making stuff up, like, again, I'm talked to these, some of them, not all of them, some of the people directly about this. This is just what is true. I'm not making that up. But do I think it will get proven? No, I don't necessarily know it will or not. I mean, when you put it all out there, the way it's kind of gotten put out there kind of makes it harder to kind of, when you say, hey, we're investigating this, it gives an opportunity to kind of cover your tracks a little bit. Jenny Zimmerman at Gen Zim Go Blue. We've heard a lot of new names on the recruiting front, but some of those titles seem to be similar to what Denard did. Does Denard still have a place in the staff? Yeah, I'm sure he does. And I know he is still on staff. I saw him before the Dusty May press conference escorting a recruit into the Michigan locker room, which is attached to the Jung Center. So, yeah, he'll still have a place on staff. It's just, they're building that. It's going to be a bigger recruiting staff. It's not going to be like someone leaves and we're going to replace them, or we're going to hire someone, then fire someone. They're just going to continue to build it, make it bigger. Edwin Simmons at Simmons_Edwin. How can we keep the culture now with this new coaching staff? Well, the good news is it wasn't, the culture has not been staff driven when it changed. It's been player driven. In 2021, when everything changed, it wasn't the coaches sitting down the players and saying, like, listen, we need to change things. It was Aiden Hutchinson, Josh Ross being like, we need to change things. And then they did. And then they passed that down to the next group. And then they passed that down to the next group. And hopefully that continues. So it's more player driven, which is what you want it to be. 3 roses in a row at Mays_engaged. What's the word in how our wide receiver room is performing so far this spring? I haven't really heard much. I mean, asked Will Johnson on Wednesday about them, and he just literally lists like which wide receivers give me most trouble, and then he just literally listed the entire roster. Hard to say. It's hard to say. I don't know. Joel at Jorel 52-4. Why do I struggle reading sometimes? Feel like there's a dyslexia thing in me somewhere. Latest spring practice chatter. Any DBs to portal rumors true? I haven't heard anything on the latter. As far as what I've heard on the former is that the defense is a bit ahead of the offense, but that's very, very common. And actually, you'd be pretty concerned if that wasn't the case in spring ball. I would share a little bit more, but it's Chris Ballas's intel. I've just heard, like, I haven't really gotten into, like, had like a great conversation with like a staffer or anybody to really get to the nitty gritty of it. But I'd heard generally that, and then you want to subscribe to the Wolverine to get Chris Ballas's intel. Because I'm not going to share stuff behind the paywall here. Julian Pike at alone_centrist. That kind of makes me sad. The lone part. But together for some reason. How will Donovan Edwards be utilized in the offense next season? Will it be a more diverse approach, say having him line up in the slot, or will it be another season of him attempting to emulate Blake Corum? Hopefully he's better at emulating Blake Corum in terms of being able to break tackles, run between the tackles. I feel like that's necessary, but I think that considering they don't have a lot of wide receivers and stuff right now, and because you do have other running backs that certainly could make impacts, I would expect to see him utilized more as how, I don't know, I guess we thought that last year didn't happen. So I would expect more versatility to be on display, but we have yet to see it really happen. Oh, we still got a lot left, and We're already at 30 minutes here. So, sideline doc at the Lolo. Coach Moore did not hesitate to promote coaches on the offensive side of the ball. Why now overlooking the internal talent to take over the D-line and coaching? Obviously, they just hired Lou Esposito. Guys know the system, have already connected with current players and recruits, and have proven their talents in coaching. Well, there's not a lot of people left, right? Now my guy, LaTroy Lewis, shout out to LaTroy. He played at Tennessee with my realtor, Danny O'Brien. He was coaching up the D-line while they were gone, but there's not a ton of people left, right? Everyone left. So I don't know who you're aside from LaTroy. Maybe this is a LaTroy burner account. I don't know. But there aren't a bunch of names that are holdovers from the last staff that are still over there. So he's really the only one. And for whatever reason, they didn't retain him, they retained him. They didn't promote him. Couldn't tell you why otherwise. Brett Schroetz at B Schroetz 5. Have we seen the last of Rod Moore at Michigan, or will he do one more year next year after the injury? I think he could come back this year. It just might be mid-season, right? Like an ACL, you can overcome that and come back in 6 months. 6 months from now is September. Do I think that'll happen? Not necessarily, but do I think he could be back for November? Absolutely. So I think you'll see Rod Moore again. We'll see, though. Christopher Michael Bauer at Chris Bauer 10. We still running primarily gap scheme, run game, or I would imagine you're not going to see much of a change. But then again, we saw some changes going from 2022 to 23, where they kind of moved from being a little bit more power. I mean, that they did more zone this last year than they did before. So I think it's just going to depend on what they feel like they've got going for them. Up front, it's a new look line. So if they feel like this line's better at gap blocking, they'll go with that. If they feel like it's better zone, then they'll go with that. St. Hildegard, the Wolverine at Bartho 81735, who's stepping up for Rod Moore. That would be Quentin Johnson and Zeke Berry are the ones who are primarily stepping up there, and Brandon Hillman as well. So they've got a lot of safety, so that's good news. Willie 40 at Biffy 40 was Mike Hart interviewing for other jobs. He did at least interview for the Indiana head coaching job before Jerry Canetti got the job, and I don't know about anywhere else. That's the only one I know for sure. Finishing us out is Jay Ricci at JMish99. What are the odds of adding guys like Beeline and Luke Yaklich to the basketball staff for Dusty? I think that you could see, there's the new job posting that just showed up on mgoblue.com of a special assistant to the head coach. I don't think that's the former JT Rogan, Zach Eisendrath, or Deanna McDaniel, Robbie Emery to Jim Harbaugh position. I think this is more of like a, like Colonel Minnick was to Jim Harbaugh, or Biff Poggi was. So I could see John Beeline filling that role, and hopefully, I'd love it if they went and got Yaklich. He's free. Go do it. Knows Ann Arbor, knows defense. Certainly could help out. All right, that's going to do it for us today. I don't know that we're going to be back on Sunday unless there's some kind of something, especially since it's Easter, although I'm not doing anything. We were supposed to have Easter dinner tonight. I did not go, so my mom was like, I'm not going, and I'm like, well, I'm not going to go either, which is partially why we have an 8 o'clock podcast instead of a noon one. So aside from church, I'm pretty much just home. So anyway, that's going to do it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you again soon. Peace.